Seth Makemer from the Blazing Musket. Happy to be joined by another MLS personality, Danny Higginbotham. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm great, great. I can't believe that we are, so deep into the season already, or already halfway there, and it's gone in the blink of an eye. But it's been great to cover, getting to know different teams, getting to travel to different stadiums as well. So I'm loving every minute of it.
Yeah, and great to perfect word to describe what's going on right now because there's so much happening both on and off the field. I'm not sure you heard, but Lionel Messi might come to Major League Soccer. It's a little scoop that I'm putting out there for the fans. If you have not heard, my mom even knows about it. It's a big deal. But first, I want to talk about the New England Revolution because you're coming to Foxborough this weekend, and we're almost a little bit past the halfway point. And this Revolution team, we're not really sure what to think of them. Really hot start, lots of injuries, kind of on the rebound right now. What do you think about the New England Revolution?
I think what you've just said there, then I think the injuries obviously have, have had a big effect. More often than not, teams that have success, it's built with a strong back line, whether that be a back three, whether that be a back four. And the way that obviously the injuries have affected you, it's led to a change of system, and certain players having to play out of position. So it's going to have that effect. But I think when you look at this weekend coming up, you're hopefully going to get the likes of Bai back, the likes of Book back. Obviously, Kessler is, he's been a big miss for you as well. So you would look at it and think things are just going to get better now because players are starting to get back fit. And then it's probably a situation where you can go to the system that's really suited you as well over recent times.
Yeah, you mentioned that we're getting players healthy. We have Brandon By on the return as well as Noel Bach, but you're going to be losing Georgi Petrovic this weekend. How big of an absence will he be?
It's a big absence because obviously he's now classed as one of the best goalkeepers in MLS, and I think probably the biggest compliment that I can give him is that nobody's really been too concerned about Turner leaving since Petrovic came in. I think everybody knew about Petrovic when Turner was still there. I certainly covered the team. I think it was just before Turner may have been leaving and Petrovic played a couple of games, but yeah, he's been absolutely outstanding. And not just the fact of him as a goalkeeper, he played every single MLS game this season. You build an understanding with your defence. And that for me is huge. Now, the likelihood is it's probably going to be Edwards that's going to come into the team now. Obviously, experienced MLS player, and I think safe hands for the game that Petrovic is going to be out for. So I don't see that being a huge issue. But yeah, there's no question about it. He's one of the best players in MLS, no doubt.
Absolutely. You mentioned Matt Turner, obviously a great goalkeeper. Now with Arsenal playing for the U.S. men's national team, we have Georgi Petrovic with the Serbian national team right now. The big debate's right there. If you're starting a team, do you take Matt Turner or do you take Georgi Petrovic?
Oh, that is that's a huge call. The one thing I would probably say, which is going to save me, is that they're both fantastic goalkeepers, but I haven't seen enough of them recently to give you an answer to that one. So I'm just going to sit on the fence.
Sure. And I remember talking to Matt Turner when he was departing from the New England Revolution.
Mm.
And what he mentioned is that Georgi Petrovic is making these stops at a younger age than he was. And that's a big thing to kind of look at it. Matt Turner came on a little bit later, but obviously very, very good. I'm looking forward to seeing him at the MLS All Star game. Do you think we see Matt Turner versus Georgi Petrovic? Is Georgi Petrovic an MLS All Star in your mind?
I think that he is. I think that he is. I think the reputation that he's got now. I think the age that he's at, and I think one thing we can't forget here as well is Kevin Hitchcock. The goalkeeping coach. He's been absolutely outstanding. I think he brought Turner on no end. I think he's doing the same now as well. So with Petrovic, so he needs a lot of credit as well. But I wouldn't be surprised to see both of the goalkeepers that you've just mentioned in either goal. That's for sure.
Absolutely. The summer also means the summer transfer window, and you mentioned a lot of injuries. Dylan Barrero being the chief amongst them. We have Henry Kessler, who's recently come off his crutches and is making his way back, but obviously is going to take some time to get up to full speed. If you're Bruce Arena, if you're the coaching staff, what do you bring in this summer? What do they need to add to be back to that elite status and challenging for that MLS Cup?
I think when you look at any team that wants to go and challenge, a lot of the time it is a goal scorer. And I think when you've got a player like Heel, who is one of the best players in MLS, he's an absolute joy to watch. If you then bring in a centre forward of a high caliber centre forward, that can work really well with Heel, then I think the job's a good one, so to speak. But that you could probably say the same about a number of teams in MLS, just missing that consistent goal scorer that's going to get you, multiple goals in certain games, going to be that match winner just when you need it. But I think the biggest thing is for New England is you're starting to get players back fit now. And I think that's the most important thing, because when you've missed big players, when they come back, they actually feel like new signings, and I think that can give everybody a lift within the squad.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for me, when I look at the New England Revolution, they're missing an aerial threat. For a team that likes to send in a lot of crosses, and admittedly,
Mm.
some of those are low crosses, you need someone who can rise above and put that ball into the back of the net. And it wasn't until a few weeks ago when Bobby Wood scored with his head that they actually had someone to score a header. And to go so many games in the season and miss that is a little troubling, in my opinion. You need that aerial threat to kind of do things. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think also when you look at a team like New England, a lot of the times they're going to the best way to possibly put it is that teams respect them. Teams respect them. So when teams come to New England, they're going to want to counter attack. That's the way that teams want to play. So they'll set themselves up. But in order for you to play counter-attacking football as the away team, you drop deep. Now, the deeper you drop, the more narrow you become. So therefore, the spaces are going to be in the wide areas. So when you're looking at the likes of when you're looking at the likes of Jones getting down the sides of the pitch, because that's where the spaces will be, that's what you're talking about there. When you're putting crosses into the box, if you've got that focal point that is going to be a real threat when crosses are coming into the box, then it becomes more difficult, because then all of a sudden the opposition is saying, yeah, we want to drop deep and narrow, because that's the way we want to defend, so we can potentially play on a counter attack. But we've also got to try and cover the width. And then you have a different array and different amount of options to put the ball into the back of the net.
Danny, you played obviously in Europe, had a very good playing career. The Revolution have some players that could one day play in Europe. Georgie Petrick being one of them, Noel Buck being one of them, Dewan Jones being someone who has expressed that interest. When you look at those three players, do you think any of them make the jump over to Europe at some point? Do you think all of them? What do you think of those three players and their possibilities of playing in Europe?
I think straight away, I think Petrovic is one that stands out for me. And people may say that it's early, but I'd also say Buck as well, because he is a player, when he's playing, you forget that he's just turned 18 years of age. He plays with an incredible amount of experience, and he's sort of what I would call a throwback, which is a midfielder that can do everything. He's not just a defensive midfielder. He can get the ball, he can drive forward as well. For him to look as he does, playing amongst seasoned professionals week in, week out, I definitely think that he is 100% the player to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to hit you with some questions here, some quick hitter questions. At the beginning of the season, I asked Lori Lindsay these questions. We've obviously got to see the Revolution a little bit more, obviously a new voice. So I'm curious to see
Mm,
exactly where you put these as the season goes on. So keep in mind with these questions, I'm asking you to predict who's going to hold these titles at the end of the
mm.
year. So not right now, but at the end of the year. Let's start off with Defender of the Year, the back line. Who will be the Revolution's Defender of the Year?
I'm going to say Romney. I think the way that he's come in from Nashville, the relationship that he had with Kessler before Kessler got injured, he's just such a calming influence. I think he brought on Zimmerman loads at Nashville as well, and I think he's been outstanding. From a defensive side of things, especially when that there are injuries within the team. He's had different partners. He's played in different systems, so I think he's been a very, very good signing. So we're talking about defender of the year. We're not including goalkeepers in that, are we? So,
Correct,
um,
correct.
so yeah. So I'll go with Romney.
So let's go up top now. Very likely up top. It could come from anywhere. Could be Romney who wins the Golden Boot for the New England Revolution,
Mm.
but probably someone that's going to be further up the field. Who do you think will be the Revolution's Golden Boot winner?
I still think it will be Heel. I know, obviously, I don't think he's top goal scorer at the moment, but the fact that he's such an intelligent player is the fact that he takes penalties as well. I think it's difficult to look much further than him. He's a player that he's just an absolute joy to watch. I love watching him, and you try and think of, because when I was covering Philadelphia Union, obviously I saw him firsthand a few times for New England. But even at that point, I was running out of words to describe him. He's just such a wonderful player, and I like him not just on the ball, but off the ball as well. You know, the work ethic that he has, he's just a special talent. So I'm going to go with Heel.
Let's talk MVP. It sounds like you really enjoy seeing Carlos Heel. Do you think that Carlos Heel will be the Revolution's MVP?
If you're New England, you want him to be MVP. You don't want Petrovic to be your MVP because it means he's being overworked. So yeah, I'm going to stick with Heel. I just think he's such a talented player, and he's one of these players that can create something from nothing and can make not a great performance become 3 points. So yeah, I'm going to stick with Heel.
And what's the biggest surprise player, the breakout player for this year for the New England Revolution?
I've already mentioned him, Buck. I think that he's, just to go back on what I said previously, 18 years of age and only just turned 18 as well. It looks as though he's played 250 games. The way that he plays within the team, the fact that he's not a defensive midfielder, he's not an attacking midfielder. He can do everything, and I think he has so much ability. He's only going to get better and better as time goes on as well. So, without question.
All right, let's talk about it. I'm sure plenty of people are talking about Lionel Messi to you. I'm sure plenty of people
Mm.
are hitting you up for potential tickets so you can see Lionel Messi in person. Obviously, this is huge for Major League Soccer. Obviously, this is huge for soccer in the United States. But for the New England Revolution, one of their foes, their Eastern Conference foes, just got better. So you tell me, should New England Revolution fans be excited about Lionel Messi? And if so, why?
I think you have to be excited. Obviously, an opposition team is going to get stronger. It's going to get stronger. The best player in the world, arguably the greatest ever player to play the game. But I think you also have to look at it another way, which is that this, if Messi does come to MLS, the growth of the league is just going to be incredible. I think what a player like him does, I think that attracts other players now that will now start saying, oh, you know what? I want to go over to MLS. So all of a sudden, I think it increases the competition. I think if you're an opposition player, you want to play against him. Don't get me wrong, you're going to be a little bit concerned that he could twist you up in knots. But I think sports people, no matter what sport you're in, you want to test yourself against the greatest players. And there's none greater than Messi. So I think, yes, it looks like he's going to Inter Miami. But I don't think that opposition teams will go, oh, this is going to make them stronger. I think this is just an unbelievable time for MLS, for everything that's going on, the way things are going forward. It's just absolutely magnificent if this eventually goes through.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, I wrote an article about this on the Blazing Musket, is that all these eyes, all these new media attention that comes to the league, it's an opportunity for teams. It's an opportunity for the New England Revolution, whether he plays at Gillette Stadium or not. We can talk about that a little bit.
Mm.
There's going to be a big crowd. I had people that showed up this past weekend, even though it was clearly advertised that he will not be at Gillette Stadium, that he has not even signed with the league yet, but they showed up because of the possibility that Messi could be there. And if they go to that stadium and they fall in love with a Georgie Petrovic, a Carlos Heel who put on a show this past weekend, well, now you're converting some of those fans. So I'm with you that obviously a team has just gotten better, but this is an opportunity to potentially show things and really build a bigger fan base. With that, there's also a possibility, like you mentioned, of new players coming over.
Mm.
And that could lead to potentially rule changes within Major League Soccer. You're hearing these big names that want to come over now, and obviously join Miami, but maybe other teams as well. In your minds, when you look at the rules, the roster rules of Major League Soccer, what needs to change? Is it about more DPs? Is it about TAM?
Yeah,
Is it about getting rid of stuff? What do you do if you're Don Garber and you're making those decisions?
I think you look at the situation, and obviously at the moment, the situation with the DPs and things like that. I think one of the things that you potentially could look at, say, okay, can we up that? But I think what you also want to do, and one of the great things about MLS is that you have this competitive nature where teams are always able to compete. Now, one of the things you can say is, like I say, if you free that up and say, right, okay, maybe now you can have more DPs, then all of a sudden, it opens up different avenues for players that could potentially come over. But I think it's interesting times ahead to see what does happen as in terms of the rules, if anything does change. The one thing I would say as well, though, just going back to our previously what we were saying, I think this has a huge effect on the young players coming through in MLS. I really do, because I've been here now this is my third season covering MLS. And one of the things that like I try and explain to my friends back home is the amount of quality young players that are coming through in MLS now. You know, we've seen players go to Europe, we've seen players go to the Premier League that not long ago were playing in MLS. We've seen teams that are now bringing younger players through, bringing them through the academy. Then they're playing in the first team. All of a sudden, there's more eyes then again of like, oh, there's this young player to keep your eye on. Okay, well let's have a look at him. So I think it raises the interest, and I just think that it raises everything about MLS unbelievably. It puts more eyes on the games because all of a sudden it's like, okay, yeah, you've got potentially got Messi coming over to Inter Miami. Well, somebody could be looking and going, let's see what their next opponent is. Let's see who they played last week. Let's see what the score was like. Let's watch that game. And then all of a sudden there could be a young player that stands out where you're like, wow, I'm going to keep my eye on him. And it's something that I love to see. I love to see young players advancing through academies and then making a name for themselves and just going from strength to strength.
Yeah, that's a really good point because if you think about the New England Revolution, part of the reason why they were able to bring in some young players like a Georgie Petrovic is because they gain a reputation of developing guys and
Yeah.
selling them on. So if
Mm.
if all of a sudden if a Noah Buck gets sold off and a player is trying to decide, am I going to stay at the Boston Bolts Academy or am I going to go to the New England Revolution Academy? Or what we're seeing more and more now are those residency homes that players are coming
Yeah.
from California, they're coming from, I mean, Eshmir comes from Wisconsin, and they go and move in and they start to believe in that system. And I wrote an article about how much the culture has changed. And Kernanotho, basically what he said is that when we took over, and this isn't a knock on the previous academy
Mm.
system, it's just the evolution of it, but we weren't getting the best players. So we weren't getting the best players in New England. But if all of a sudden, you're selling a player to Tottenham or you're allowing them to trade it to Tottenham or something like that,
Mm.
they're going to go ahead and join that academy. I
Yeah.
do want to go back to
Yeah.
Messi, but I'm interested now
Mm.
that you brought this up and thinking about your own playing career. One player that the Revolution have that really hasn't come good so far is Giacomo Veroni. And I look at Giacomo Veroni as a striker, and he does some good things. Not much of a hold-up striker, more of the
Yeah.
ability to run towards net. You've watched some games from Giacomo Veroni. What do you think of him? Is he going to become good, or do the Revolution, like you said earlier, need to rely on someone else?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I think he there was a stage when he got 3-3 in 3-3 games. He seems to have a good understanding with Heel, but like you've said, he's not necessarily a focal point. He's a player that's very good link up. I think he's got a wonderful first touch. But it's all about then what the manager wants. Do you want to have the ability where if teams are going to come and press you, you can go over that press to a more focal player, more focal type player, that physical aspect. Now, because one of the things you've got Bo who's playing, he wants to have this freedom. He's got a really good understanding of Hill. So when you have players that want to have the freedom, for me, when you watch Hill and you watch Bo, they link up exceptionally well together. They're exceptionally well, but neither of them are the play that's going to stay through the middle. So you want to have that point of reference, so to speak, where you can say, right, okay, things are a little bit crowded here. Where can we go? We're being pressed a little bit. Teams are pressing high against us. Okay, well, you know what? We can go a little bit more direct. We can go a bit more over the press to a Wood, and then you've got the likes of Bow and Heel playing off them. When you when you then mix that up and you take that focal point, so to speak, out of the team, it can be then more difficult to play more than one way. So that's the way that I would potentially look at it. And I'm trying to look at it from a manager's side of things. You want to have more options. Now, don't get me wrong, he's come off the bench having an effect. But I think if you're trying to win a game, at times when you have that starting 11, you want to look at it and think, right, can we score different types of goals? And I think when you have someone like Wood in the team, he gives you, I'm not saying the absolute ability to do that, but he gives you the potential to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wood's been very good. All right, let's go back to Lionel Messi here, and let's finish you up with some rapid fire questions. Just like the
Okay.
ones before, you can go, give as long of an answer as you want. Give a short answer. Doesn't matter to me. But it's all going to be about Lionel Messi this time. Let's start off with the big question, the hot debate. Is Lionel Messi the best player that we've ever seen on the soccer field?
Oh, hmm. I put him and Maradona. Maradona, I used to love watching Maradona. Sensational. And it's difficult for me to go back to Pele. Don't get me wrong. I've seen like all the clips, the videos, and everything like that. But Maradona, I remember the '86 World Cup, and it was, the hand of God against my country, against England. But then the other goal that he scored in that one. So it's so difficult for me to separate those two. Um, you know what? I will just edge with Messi.
I like it.
Just
Uh, when you look at the impact on Major League Soccer, David Beckham obviously started this whole thing. The Beckham rule becomes the DP rule. Which one is going to have a greater overall impact when it's all said and done? David Beckham or Messi?
I think when you look at where the world is now, I think Messi. You know, David Beckham was, an incredible footballer, world class footballer. Won near enough everything there was to win in the game. But I think where the world is now is in terms of social media, as in terms of everything else. I think that inflates everything. I think the fact of MLS now is there for everybody to watch. It's not just in America. So I think that adds to it as well. So I'm going to go with Messi.
Lots of names being thrown around right now. If you were to bring in another big name from anywhere around the country besides Messi, give me one big name to come to MLS.
Anybody, or are we being realistic?
Anyone.
Ooh, anyone, right? You're gonna have to give me a little while here. I'm trying to look at. If you're looking at anybody and it's just like anybody you want to bring over right now, you wouldn't look much further than a Haaland or an Mbappe, would you? You wouldn't look further than those two at the moment. And hopefully one day they'll play in MLS. And I'm sure it's not going to be for a while yet. But the fact that you've got a player like Messi coming over here, players are now going to start looking more and be going, yeah, you know what? I want a bit of that. I want to be involved in this process of the league growing unbelievably.
Do you have a realistic player in mind? There's obviously so many players. Do you have a
Yeah.
realistic player?
Oh, you know who I think would be a really interesting one to see because he was just a joy to watch for so long. I love Busquets. And I know there's been talk of Busquets coming over here, but it was like he was just so incredible in an incredible Barcelona team. I don't think he got the credit that he deserved. Um, then you look at one of Messi's old teammates, Neymar. So there are only so many players, and I think that's what makes it exciting. I think the fact that everybody's thinking to themselves, okay, Messi potentially coming over now looks like it's potentially going to happen. Who's going to be next? And I think that in itself just creates an incredible amount of excitement in the league.
If you're an MLS team, do you try to sign Ronaldo? Obviously, Sporting KC apparently got
Mm.
close, but do you try to sign Ronaldo or do you just let him play out his career somewhere else?
I think if you've got the ability, it wasn't long ago that he was at the club that I support, Manchester United, and the goals that he scored the season before he left were incredible. And we all know for so long now it's been Messi, Ronaldo, Messi. Who's the best? Who's the best out of these two? And I didn't like that. I just love the fact that we were alive during the era of these two incredible world class players. But yeah, I think if you're an MLS team and you have these expectations of having success, then he would help bring success. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Do you think Messi ever plays on the turf of Gillette Stadium?
That's an interesting one because I have seen that. I've seen that debated, as in terms of the turf and the. See, it's different. See, in England, so we call it astroturf and we call it obviously real grass. So I don't know. That is a situation that I'm sure we'll find out soon enough. But hopefully, yeah, hopefully he does.
Will Messi ever win an MLS Cup in his career?
I think he could do. I think he could do, and it goes back to what we were saying previously, which is the league is competitive. Inter Miami, obviously, at the moment, things aren't going great for them, but everybody knows that a team can be transformed in a short space of time. You have to look at Cincinnati. What Cincinnati are doing now for so long, I think for a few years, when they first came around, they were finishing bottom of the league. Now you look at them, clear at the top of the East. So, and that's without Messi. So you bring Messi in and other things that follow as well. And what you have when you get a play like Messi, or when you play with a player like Messi, he brings the best out in everybody else. He brings players' percentages up so much because good players make other players better around them. So yeah, it's impossible to say no because you know what this league is like. You know the ability that he has.
All right, let's end with this one. We know that the World Cup is coming to the United States. Which one is more important to the growth of Major League Soccer? Is it Messi coming here or hosting in 2026?
I think they both go hand in hand. I think they both go hand in hand. I think first and foremost, it was great when America was chosen in 2026 to be one of the hosts. I think that was absolutely phenomenal. I think with the growth of the sport, it's huge. But I feel that football over here was going to keep growing before the World Cup. So that in itself was going to heighten MLS. But I think what you're doing, you're speeding up the growth now by potentially having someone like Messi playing in your league. So I think it's both. I think 2026 is going to be unbelievable. It's going to be such a big time for the country. It's going to be a big time for the national team because obviously there's so many young players that are going to be at their peak then. But also, I think, like I say, you're speeding things up with the potential of Messi coming over and playing in MLS as well. So I think they're both going to have such a huge impact.
Danny, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us where we can find you on social media and what time and where we can find the game.
Yeah, so Higginbotham 05 on my social media. That's Twitter, and then Apple TV. We will be obviously live on there from 7:30, and it's a game I'm really looking forward to.
Thank you so much.